Hi, I'm MJ Hickox here at Leopold's, where we pair our bottles with books. So this month's wine selection is a Dow. That's from the region Dow in Portugal. It's the highest altitude wine region, and it produces the more prestigious wines of Portugal. It's a bit hard to get your hands on, so we're excited to have this bottle here. Dow blends are usually Tempranillo, Jaune, Touriga Nacional, grapes that are indigenous to this region of the world, and they are big in body, so you can really pair with robust food flavors. This particular bottle received a 90-point score from Wine Enthusiast, and we think you're going to love it.
Hello and welcome to Cooking with the Cap Times. We're so happy that you could join us for today's demonstration. This month our chef is Chef Matt Pace of Great Dane. We're excited to turn it over to him in a minute. He's going to make a delicious seafood stew. But first I did want to thank everyone who's watching, both those who are watching at home and then those who are joining us here in person. We have a small audience of in-person attendees here, and if you would like to be one in the future, it's very enjoyable. You get food, you get wine, it's a good time. You can do that by becoming a Cap Times member, which you can do by giving any amount at membership.captimes.com. Right now we're actually kicking off our end-of-year membership drive. We're aiming to raise $60,000 by the end of the year to help fund our newsroom and the work we do, including events like this. So if you'd like to support local journalism, events like this, and get perks like coming to events like this, you can become a member. I encourage you to do so. And then if you're watching at home, we do encourage you to ask questions throughout. We'll get those answered by the chef and by Lindsay. And also, whoever asks the best question, we'll pick at the end. The factors that we use to determine best are questionable, but leave your questions, we'll get them answered, and then one person will win a bottle of wine that you just saw that was picked to pair with tonight's dish from Leopold's. And leading into that, I do want to thank our sponsors. So Kesnick's is our official kitchen sponsor of Cooking with the Cap Times. They host us every week. They have for the almost 3 years that we've been doing this now. We're so grateful to them for letting us have this space for a night a month. You can come here to shop like a chef to fulfill all your kitchen supply needs, whatever you need. I assure you they have it, it's huge. Also like to thank our official wine pairing sponsor, Leopold's. You just saw a short video from them talking about the wine pairing that MJ picks out every month to pair perfectly with the dish that our chefs make. You can stop by there to get wine, to get books, get espresso cocktails, also everything you want. And I think with that, I will pass it over to our food editor, Lindsay Christians.
Thank you, Beck. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Matt, for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is awesome. I am so glad that I'm having you here like during the Thanksgiving time, because I feel like I always, like the Great Dane always sort of pops to mind with Thanksgiving, because you guys do a whole
We love
spread.
the holidays,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's all about friends and family, right? So
Yeah.
that's why it's so great.
Yeah, the menu you guys do, though, it's all like wonderful traditional things. It's lovely, you know?
Absolutely.
So, first of all, tell us a little bit about you. You've been cooking in Madison now for
I have, yeah.
a
I've
minute.
been cooking in Madison. Makes me feel old now, by the way. Yeah, for better half of my life, I'm the executive chef at the Great Dane Pub and Brewing Company, 4 locations here in Madison and 1 up in Wausau. And actually today we're preparing something that we just put on our fall-winter menu. So hopefully if you like it, you can stop by, have a beer, give it a try.
So, quick question. When you are developing stuff for the menu, how often do you want to incorporate the beers that you make?
We try as much as we can.
Okay.
Yeah. Each one of our chefs has a few favorites of our beers that they enjoy to cook with most, right? So, you know, any chance we get, we're trying to work some of it in.
What are your favorite beers to cook with?
I like, so I brought one of them today. It's our Crop Circle Wheat. It's a wheat beer, so it's got lots of hints of citrus, very refreshing, cleansing on the palate. I also love cooking with our Scotch Ale.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's really good in like a braise, like a pot roast or something like that. It has a really good caramelly flavor, and the more you cook it, it just gets sweeter and sweeter. Really yummy. Yeah.
I love beer for braising. I'm not, admittedly, not much of a beer drinker, but I do really love when I'm putting it in a braise. So I will
Absolutely,
sometimes
yep.
like have a couple beers on hand just so that I can use it to cook with, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
This is a great example of cooking with beer.
It is, absolutely.
I also really love about this that like there's a lot of this that you could sort of make ahead and reheat, especially if you have family coming over for the
Right.
holidays. I feel like we put a lot of focus on that big feast meal, you know, like I got to get the turkey and I got to get the stuffing and all the sides and everything, and then the day after or the day after that even, like once the leftovers start to get low, I start to panic.
Right. Well, you know, the other thing I like about this that I thought would be good around the holiday time too is it's a pretty flexible recipe, right? And the way when I work with a lot of our cooks, right, I like to think on the process, learning that more than the specifics of the recipe, right? So depending on what you have available, what seafood, for example, looks the freshest, right? Being able to kind of have that flexibility with it is always a huge plus.
Nice. All right. Well, where are we getting started?
Yeah, so we're gonna start. I'm gonna turn up this fancy burner here.
Well,
and we're kind of gonna break, so we're making what we call the drunken fisherman's stew, sort of Chiappino, bouilla-based inspired dish. We're gonna break it up into two components. First, we'll make the broth component, and then we'll cook some of our seafood. Today, we're gonna do Gulf shrimp, mussels, and mahi-mahi.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
we'll
for
get
the-
started with that, yeah.
For the broth, you could make this well in advance and
Oh, absolutely. In
freeze
fact,
it or
Yep, it would freeze great. It's even better the next day,
Nice,
right?
okay.
As it allows to cool, assuming everybody, I never have space in my fridge for anything,
I
so
thought you were putting that whole thing in there. and I
No,
was
no,
like,
no, no.
we
But we are,
frying?
so I'm cooking this for 12 people, right? So we are gonna do it in a little bit larger batch, but then again, the flexibility, right? Very easy to cut this in half, in quarters for 2 people, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with some extra virgin olive oil, and essentially we're making a flavored broth, almost like a soup, right? So we're gonna start with our foundation of flavors, which is gonna be onion, carrots, and celery.
Quick question.
Uh-huh.
So this is like what, a medium dice, I would say?
I would call this a medium dice.
Right.
Yes.
And so these three, this size I'm doing like with my knife on my board versus like shoving them all in a food processor and going zhuzh, zhuzh, zhuzh.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The way things are cut is important, right? And right, if they were to be pureed in a food processor, for example, you're breaking them down further. As a result, they're going to release more water. They might not caramelize as much, and they'll kind of steam, right? Probably not the end of the world, but that would be my recommendation.
Is this mirepoix?
This is onion, carrots, celery, mirepoix. So that's what we're
Mirepoix.
going to start with.
I still have CSA carrots hanging on from the end of the CSA, which was not recently. But
I'm
they're
going to
great
grab
in
a
something
spoon
like
from
this.
behind you, pardon me.
Because they don't have to be pretty. You know, they're going into a soup situation.
So anytime I make something like this, any soup, for example, I can honestly say probably anything I learned about cooking was from having to make soup every day. It's a great lesson in seasoning, layering flavors as you go, right? So we're gonna season this now with a little salt and pepper. And we're just gonna let these vegetables we don't want them to caramelize all the way, but we're gonna give them maybe 2-3 minutes just till they soften, get a little translucent.
The salting part is really interesting, especially when you're building a stock or a broth base, right?
Right.
Because as it cooks more and it reduces, it gets saltier. So I've always been like really nervous about how much salt I'm adding and when.
Right, and that's kind of what I meant. That's a great point by season as you go. If each step of the process, again, going back to the process component, if each step tastes good, usually by the end result will taste good, right? Whereas if you're going through and then at the end you're like, oh, I didn't season anything, it's a lot harder. You'll be adding a lot more salt, and you'll have saltiness instead of flavor.
Instead of depth, yes. Yeah.
So I'm gonna keep these sauteing. I'll give them 1 more minute or so. And then we're gonna add the next component of our vegetables, which is gonna be fennel, which I love with seafood, really kind of anisey, sweet flavor, and some leeks as well.
The leeks are thin.
Yeah, so you can see I cut these a different size than the mirepoix vegetable. because I really want these to kind of cook down and become almost a part of the broth, more so than something that you'll actually have some toothsomeness, if that's a word.
That's a level where I'm probably getting out the mandolin just to get them
Mandolins work great for this, yep.
And I love a fennel too. Although, as I've mentioned before, I always have to wear that steel glove because I have cut myself. And now, if the minute it comes out of the cupboard, my husband comes running with the glove, and he's like, okay.
So,
but they're thin, they're little tiny.
Yep. And then while this is kind of cooking and adding, I'm gonna kind of go to the next, and really what I like about the flavor in this dish is we use pimenton, which is a Spanish smoked paprika. Has anyone, I'm sorry for people at home, there's no smell-o-vision.
Like, you gotta pass this
but if you
around,
want to
so
smell this, I just think it's one of our most used spices at the Great Dane. Almost anywhere you would use normal paprika, it works great. I mean, salt, pepper, a little bit of that, grilled chicken. It's just a really great spice, and we love using it. So these are, it's been a couple minutes. I'm gonna add our leeks.
I'm wrapped in it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'll just follow it down here.
And I'm gonna add our fennel. I think that's probably good. I didn't know about the best question contest.
I know, isn't it great?
I'm really good at Seinfeld trivia, so if anybody has that as a question.
This I associate so much with like Slovak and Polish flavors. Like
You'll see it a lot in like chicken paprikash and that sort of a thing.
Food of my people. Ooh, this is actually quite different than the smoky paprika that I have at home. Like they can have a lot of variety. I think.
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of different brands. There's a good, almost more of a Mexican smoked paprika. They use a morita chili, which is a little spicier, and I think even more smoky.
It's darker
than that, and it's going to be darker. Yep. So so now these are kind of going. They're getting soft. Going back to our process, we've kind of built our foundation, right? Seasoned with salt and pepper. Next, we're going to add whatever other dried spices we're using. I like to add them here so they kind of get coated in some of the oil that we're cooking with, and the flavors really bloom a little bit. So I've got some Mexican oregano, and then we're going to do some of our smoked pimenton. I kind of like a lot, right?
I do stock different kinds of oregano, but I don't know why. I use them when they're called for differently, but I don't know why. I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, it's probably pretty marginal.
Like Greek oregano, Mexican oregano.
Usually when it comes to that, it's whatever's going to be freshest is the best, right? So whatever has, the most on the shelf usually means that's the one people are buying. So, so we've got our vegetables going, and then we're going to add some fresh garlic at this point. I like to add this afterwards. If I add it all the way at the beginning, it might get a little burned, and that fresh garlic flavor is really quite strong.
That is so
I'm going to add a lot of garlic here.
Okay.
This is
okay. Wait.
I would say I probably did.
Did
so again, I'm making this for 12 people.
Yeah.
But that was probably a whole head of garlic.
Yeah. Did you put it in a food processor? What did you do?
This I did put in a food processor.
I was like, that's a ridiculous amount to individually.
When I cook at home and I don't have to do an insane amount of garlic, I like to use a microplane. And you can just kind of grate the cloves of garlic.
I've done this. Again, I grate my knuckles when I do that sometimes. But it makes it a paste. It really breaks it down when you use the microplane. But I'm always like, I gotta get the last little bit, and then I take the skin off my hand, which is bad.
Yes. I mean,
don't do that. But also I feel like the microplane I like better than the garlic press. When I was first married, I got 3 for wedding gifts, and I was like, how much garlic am I pressing? But also, garlic press to me is similar enough to the knife that I don't.
Yeah, I think it's slower than that.
Put it in there.
No, I like the microplane too. Just like going back to why certain things you don't want to put in the food processor. With garlic, the more you chop it, the kind of stronger the garlic flavor will be. The more, kind of that spicy, pungent garlic. Whereas if I'm cooking something longer and I still want that flavor, even using a whole clove, right, you'll get a much softer, almost a sweeter.
Yeah, just like a
note,
smash
right?
and a throw it in.
Exactly. So I'm gonna add a little tomato paste to this now. That'll add good flavor. It'll also help add some body to our sauce. So I'm just gonna do
Caramelizes so well.
1 can too. I love caramelizing tomato paste.
Sugar.
I remember the first time I made or worked through, it was an Indian recipe where I really understood the value of caramelizing the tomato product as well, because there's lots of sugars in there. So I'm just going to give this about 1 more minute.
I learned about the tomato paste and caramelizing and sugars when I burnt it, like more than once.
That will happen, yes.
Just scorched the bottom of my pan, and I was like, well, okay.
Well,
Good
that
to know.
kind of brings to a good point. You're trying to find that like sweet spot, right? Where you can get some caramelization actually sticking to the pan. Because in about 1 minute or so, we're going to deglaze this pan with some crop circle wheat and then a little bit of white wine too, just for acidity. So I think we're at that point now. So
It smells
I'm
really
going
good.
to
It's very
open
aromatic.
the air. Yeah, I think I'll probably, for this amount, I'll do a whole can or maybe 3/4. And again, flexible recipe. I had on my to-do list today to read the recipe before I came here just to make sure I'm doing it right. And I was like, no, that's an opportunity to teach about process instead of following a recipe. And then I'm gonna just grab that white wine too. For cooking, you know, I mean, ultimately anything you have on hand, old wine, usually the better, right? Just so.
Old meaning like
Like, I didn't get to the whole bottle the other day.
that, right? It's not like aged.
Yes,
It's
thank
like
you.
don't open something beautiful and delicious. I mean, don't be like, it's terrible, you know. But like,
Yeah,
if it's beautiful and delicious, just drink it. Don't put it in your stew.
absolutely.
Good
All
to
right,
say.
so I like to bring, anytime I add any sort of an alcohol component to deglaze the pan, I like to bring it to a boil just to cook some of the alcohol out. And while that's boiling, we'll kind of talk about the other 2 things that are going to be added to this. And that's, one is a shrimp or a fish stock. Really easy thing to make at home, especially with shrimp. My kids love shrimp, so we buy them all the time. Save the shells, right? And they can go in just a pan kind of like this with onion, carrot, celery. I like to add bay leaf if you have it, whole black peppercorn, a head of garlic, or a clove of garlic, I should say,
Clove.
and cold water to cover. Bring it to a simmer and cook for about 20, 30 minutes or so. And it's just a great way to take advantage of those shrimp shells. I'm gonna go grab what we have now here, and I'm going to add this to the pan. I think I'm just gonna add the whole thing, actually, or most of it. Because the other part we're going to use, let's see, 12 people, is a fire roasted tomato, or like a broiled tomato. This is something we do with all of our canned tomatoes at the Great Dane just before we use them. It's a great way just to kind of cook some of the water out. Also, you get a nice roasted flavor. So I've got some of that over here. I just took a couple cans, whole Roma tomatoes, scoop them out of the liquid that is in the can. I want to save that because I'm going to add that back to it afterwards. And just either in your oven under the broiler or, you know, as high as the oven goes, just cook them enough so they start to get little black marks on them. You know, kind of get that
take
char.
the smoke alarm off.
Yes.
Put it down. But this would never, like, I cook canned tomatoes regularly, but it would never have occurred to me to broil them without their juice. Where did that technique come from?
You know, I don't even remember the first time I saw it. But it's just a great way to kind of add
No, it's
one more
brilliant,
element
yeah.
of flavor, especially for a dish like this where we've already got the smokiness and the paprika, right? So just kind of that other element of flavor. So depending on how liquidy or thick you want this broth to be, you can add more stock. If you don't have stock, you can use water. It's fine. Or if you want it a little more thick, more tomato, I'm gonna do about half and half here for this one. I saw a ladle walking around somewhere. Maybe I'll bring my tools closer to me.
If I didn't have, when I don't have stock, I use Better Than Bouillon. There's a seafood one, there's a veggie one.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chicken one, there's a beef one. And I will make chicken stock, especially like during the winter time when we're roasting a lot of chickens, but I don't make it a lot or use it a lot in the summertime. So especially like as we're getting into colder weather, I maybe have some leftover stock in the freezer, but the Better Than Bouillon is awesome. Like it works really well.
They're definitely good. I've even used those sometimes. You can dissolve a little bit of them in oil or water and almost as like a rub or a marinade for something on the grill. Yeah, they work really great.
This looks amazing already.
Yeah, starting to smell good. So we're at the point now where we're gonna give it a taste. We wanna check for salt for the most part.
When you do the tomatoes, are you seasoning them as well? When they
I
go
would
into
season
the
them with a little salt and pepper right before they're broiled. Anytime I want something to caramelize or brown, seasoning it with salt helps that process, right? Salt will draw out the moisture. 8th grade science class, right? Osmosis will pull some of that water out of, in this case, tomatoes, right? And what'll come with it will be any of the natural sugars or whatever that's in there, and those will just kind of speed up that browning quite a bit too.
Do you do it on aluminum foil, parchment paper, silicone?
Aluminum foil or
Okay.
like a metal sheet
I'm
tray
imagining
works
just
good.
mess. Like because it'll scorch right on. It's sugars and stuff. Like it'll, yeah. And I don't do the dishes in my house, but still someone does. So I should be conscientious.
Yeah. So I think I have some spoons here. Pardon me. Yeah, so I'm gonna put a little more salt in there, but otherwise I think we're pretty good.
This came together really quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it helps that, all the stuff I had chopped
you
for
had
me
chopped
at
things,
work
yes.
before I came here.
Yeah, you did chop stuff.
But no, super easy. If you have time, let it simmer for 30, 40 minutes. But even once the vegetables are cooked, you're pretty much good to go. Last component in here is going to be so these, when we're talking about medium dice, I would call these a large dice.
Large dice, yeah.
Yukon potatoes, just for TV time, I blanch these ahead of time. But if you're making this at home, I would just throw them in at this point. By the time it comes to a boil, 10, 15 minutes later, the potatoes will be cooked.
You did peel them. Do you have to?
Yes. No, of course not.
Go. No, you don't. You don't.
No, you absolutely don't.
We do have one question from Margaret, which is a question I've always wondered also. How essential is bay leaf? I don't know what flavor I'm looking for when I add and then remove bay leaf.
Good question, Margaret. Bay leaf is a elusive flavor. I would best describe it as floral. So if you've ever, I would, not the same thing, but if people have cooked with herbs de Provence before and you get a little bit of a floral note, they have, usually there's lavender in that too, which will add to that, but it's that kind of flavor. More of a fragrant than a bay leaf. If you don't have it, it's fine.
I love bay leaf, but also that, what does bay leaf do is internet controversy. People want to know what bay leaf does. Just Google it and look at Serious Eats and stuff like that, because people get very divided on bay leaf is nonsense, no one needs it, and I love bay leaf. It's amusing to me.
If you ever have a reason or just want to buy, sometimes at certain stores you'll see fresh ones kind of in those little plastic. You'll definitely get a better sense of what the flavor's like there.
I feel like they sit in my cupboard for so long that any flavor they ever had just sort of leaches away. But I don't know if that's right.
Usually that's probably the case. I know I have
true,
6 half containers of bay leaf at home. So
Yeah.
it's that thing, it's you don't ever know if you have it, and then it's I'll just buy it. Okay.
We have another question from Nancy. She wants to know, what kind of salt do you use when cooking?
My favorite salt is Morton kosher salt. Great question, by the way.
Morton.
I like Morton.
You're maybe the first chef who likes Morton? Not a Diamond Crystal guy.
No, and it's only for the way it feels. Actually, this is Diamond Crystal, just because we couldn't get Morton. And it really doesn't matter in terms of flavor. I mean, you could say they're a little different. What I recommend with salt is use the same one always.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're talking about process again, right? instead of having to measure, you just have a better sense of how much it feels in your hand. You're used to the size of the grain, and you just have a better idea of that was a large pinch or a small pinch, right?
Yeah, it's like when you're cooking in an Airbnb or a Vrbo or something, and you're like in a kitchen that's not yours, and you're using a salt that you're not used to. I always get it wrong, inevitably, because I know what I'm used to, like the size of the pitch.
Right. So I'm gonna add our potatoes now and kind of turn the heat down on this. These I just blanched if you want to speed things up or prep ahead, right? I did cold water just to cover and then threw in a copious amount of butter. You don't have to. And just slowly cooked them in there with some thyme and 1 whole garlic clove and kosher salt.
So water to cover, butter.
Salted water. I would start it cold, right? And then turn it on medium-high heat. Once it comes to a simmer, about 10 minutes after that, and then they're done.
Nice.
I think. No, I would do it in the cube, yes. So I like to dice them first. The reason for that being, yeah, they'll definitely cook faster. And then also, you know, when I work with our chefs at the Great Dane, I always, you know, one of the things I find myself saying is we have to think about what it's like to eat too. How do you want this to feel in the mouth? How do you want it to fit on the spoon, right? So for this dish, we wanted the potatoes to feel like a substantial component, right?
Yeah. Is this the kind of thing you would have grown up eating?
You know, I grew up in an Italian family, so usually around the holidays, lots of anything kind of Italian-y type influence, right? So not so much on the seafood, but we would have done something very similar. We would usually do some sort of like ossobuco-y type thing around the holidays, so something like that.
Got it, okay.
Put it in there. So great, that's rocking and rolling. We're gonna let it kind of do its thing. We can go on to cooking our seafood for today.
Sounds great.
Yeah? Excellent.
And you said mussels, shrimp, and
Yeah, so we've got
mahi-mahi
here.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Yeah, this was really good fish that we were able to get. You can use any sort of firm whitefish, cod, haddock, tilapia would work well too. You want to avoid anything that's going to be a little too oily. And the way we're going to do this here, mainly for presentation's sake, but also because I think it helps with the flavor, we're going to pan-sear the fish separately from everything else. If you were at home and were just being extra casual or whatever, you could easily just throw the fish in there and sort of let them poach in the broth till they're cooked. I would probably cut them in smaller
I can
pieces
often
then, right?
get things like cod and haddock frozen. Would you thaw it overnight the day before, or in the fridge, I mean?
I would do it overnight the day before. I always like that. You know, it's just if you have the time, and for me, if you remember, right? It's just always helps quality. So I'm going to season these pretty well with kosher salt and black pepper.
It almost looks finer than kosher salt to me.
Yeah, that's the diamond crystal, I'm telling you. I think Morton does have a little larger grain, and
I normally use diamond crystal, so that should be what I'm used to. Oh, maybe I'm
just gonna pop some.
This is just, it's really beautifully cut. Did you get it as like a fillet? And you
So
cut it
yeah,
in?
we get fish and loins. I like to, especially for pan-searing fish, I always like to do it a little bit on a bias.
Yeah, a lot of like angled cuts here. Yeah,
exactly. I like the way that looks, and also it does help it to cook evenly, right? You can kind of make sure that they're all the same thickness all the way through.
This is what, like an inch and a half, maybe?
Yeah, these are
would
about
say.
3.5, 4 ounce pieces. You know, and I'm thinking we'll probably do 5 shrimp, 5 or 7 mussels per person, plus our broth. And you know, it's and some really good ciabatta bread, which is always great with this kind of thing. So I'm just gonna get salt and pepper on both sides. I always like to season from up high. And then it seems kind of weird, you know, you're seasoning the space around it too, so you can kind of, right? Waste not, want not. You want to get all that goodness. So pan-searing fish, we like to high pan. I like non-stick for sure. Really high pan, high heat. And we're gonna try to cook this about, at least 70%, 2/3 of the way on one side. We're gonna get a nice crust on one side, and we're gonna then transfer it to a tray and just finish it in the oven.
I'm glad you said high heat because I thought you meant high sides. Because that also has pretty high sides.
It does have high sides. It was the largest pan I could find,
Okay.
which meant it won the challenge. And then also a good amount of oil. It's gonna seem like a lot. Keep in mind we're doing it for 12 portions, but you kind of want the cooking to be not just, right, because that oil is gonna get hot too, right? So you'll have a little, maybe a centimeter, couple millimeters or so layer of oil that's also gonna help make that crust look really nice and
Got it.
golden brown.
It's interesting, as soon as you put the seasoning on, they start to look a little bit wetter because they were
Shiny.
pretty dry.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were dry when you started, which I think is like another step that I'm always just sort of like, oh, I gotta dry everything out. but it
No,
won't
that is
make a
absolutely.
crust.
I wish everybody was observant as you. That shininess is exactly what, like I was saying about helping with the caramelization. It's anybody's roasting a turkey for Thanksgiving and you season it 30, 40 minutes ahead of time. You'll notice the skin will get, a little shinier, a little more taut.
Yeah.
Right? That is what helps the browning and the crispiness of the skin. So I think this will be hot. Whenever I'm cooking, here I'll stand on this side for the camera people. Whenever I'm cooking multiple things in one pan, I use the clock method, right? So I'm gonna start at 12 o'clock and kind of work the best I can, work around that way, right? And, it just kind of helps me keep an eye on which one is first and which one is last.
I always forget that. Like, I put them all in there, but in different order. That's really smart.
I am probably going to be pushing the limits on the size of this pan, but you definitely don't want it to be touching or crowded to the point where there isn't space in between each one. We're trying to get, again, that caramelization, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we want to have enough room where they can brown.
And it's canola, so that it has a little bit of a higher smoke point there.
Yes, this is, I believe, canola oil, or whatever the gracious hosts at Kesnick's use for cooking.
Sunflower oil. Ooh,
even
nice.
better.
I have some sunflower oil at home. And grapeseed I've used it before as well.
All right, so these look good. And you can see we're really just kind of gonna let them hang out 60, 70% on that one side, just to really get that crust. And then, monitor the heat as you go. There's definitely more settings on a burner than off and high, right? So you can adjust it as you go.
The thing that happens on my crappy electric stove at home is that the ones in the middle will cook faster than the ones on the outside. So I have learned that as much as my pan can hold is not as much as my stove can cook. Do you know what I'm saying at the same time?
Absolutely.
So I will do less at a time just because this is very nice. But that's not what I have. It happened with chicken just a couple days ago. I was like, well, these ones are done, but these ones are not. So it's always a crapshoot. Right. Oh God, I should have a good stove. So, do you remember where you learned to cook fish?
I'd say definitely a few places I enjoy working at. I worked with Shinji Muramoto at his old restaurant on King Street, which was a really cool place. So lots of fish there that we handled.
Nice.
Yeah.
This is looking beautiful.
It is. I'm going to give it another taste. It's nice. Now, maybe a pinch more salt. And then, let's see, I found a really good fish spatula. Great for working with.
I read a great
Probably one more minute.
I read a great piece the other day that was sort of like an ode to single-use tools. You know, like the grapefruit
Right.
spoon or whatever.
The avocado knife.
The avocado knife. Yeah, and there are a couple of things, like a fish spatula. I would use it for more than just fish,
It's
right?
great for, I mean, if you're not using a nonstick pan, great for eggs. Great for like if you make brownies and you really need to get one out of the pan. It's good because they're a little flexible, right?
Yep. It's like an offset spatula.
Yeah.
It's good for a bunch of things. But there are a lot of like just little random kitchen tools that I would be like, oh no, like I don't need that. But sometimes it's just the one thing that's gonna make your life that much better.
If you enjoy using it, then it's worth having, right? So after we flip these, we're gonna add some butter, whole garlic cloves, and some fresh thyme to the pan. Kind of make a really flavorful bath, like who wouldn't want to be in that thing, right? For the fish to kind of baste them in real quick, and then we'll transfer them over to the oven.
Nice. We did kind of a similar.
Not necessary if you don't have any of this at home. It's totally great without it.
We did kind of a similar basting thing with a chef who was doing steak, where it was like basting
Exact
with the
same
butter.
process,
Yep.
right? So I think these now are probably good to flip. Well, getting there.
This is the hardest part, is like waiting until they're ready to actually release from the pan. Because I always want to rush it. Chef hands. It'd be burning if it was me. So you can sort of see, I don't know if you guys can see this, but the color in the fish is changing as it cooks more through. And so it's over halfway where it starts to get opaque, and that's when he's turning them. And also a little bit of browning around the edges.
Yep, nice little caramelization there, and the butter will help it brown too.
And the cuts that you did on the fish is allowing for some of that.
Uh-oh. Yeah, oh, I got it. Oh my gosh, what an assistant. Yeah, again, more surface area, right?
So like a bit of a bias cut. I like to do that on
A lot of butter.
carrots and other veggies because it's kind of a similar thing if you're roasting and sauteing.
Put some in here too, because why not, right? I actually like to, whenever I make a broth-based soup, finish it with a little knob of butter, and it'll thicken it just enough and kind of add a good sheen, shininess to it, and also kind of gives a smoother mouthfeel.
Do you know what you're making for Thanksgiving?
No, I got my 2 sons signed up to help.
Okay. How old are they?
They're 14 and 11.
Okay.
Youngest one's really into cooking, so we're looking forward to it. We make rolls every year, like a Parker House roll.
Like a Parker House?
He's excited to do those for sure.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So I'm gonna add some garlic, some fresh thyme. Grab a little spoon here.
I was always in charge of artfully arranging things, like a big bag of vegetables, and my mother would say, artfully arrange. It's not cooking.
I always joke with my wife, I'll be like, oh, it should look like it just fell from the sky, right? And we're making a pizza and she'll be one. Hers always look way better than mine.
Really
so.
pretty.
So we'll just kind of give this a little quick baste.
Ooh. We do have a piece up right now at the Cap Times that I didn't write, but I did assign. That are 13 restaurants that will cook for you on Thanksgiving. So either like buffets or like, you know, go to the Great Dane and have like a full, beautiful meal there that's all made for you, or like take and bake, which I think you guys are doing too.
Yeah, we're doing both. So we have a few Thanksgiving themed dishes that we'll be serving at our pubs that day.
Yeah.
A few of them which are available for pick up too, hot, ready to eat. So if you need to get away from the family or whatever, everything's ready to go.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna transfer these to a baking tray real quick, and I'll get our other pan hot. We'll cook our shrimp off and then steam up our mussels. And then we're pretty much getting close to being where we're at, ready to eat.
Does it make a difference how much variety you're using in the fish that you use for this? Like,
No, not at all.
Okay.
You know, I would say freshest is most important, right? But calamari, clams, you know, as far as whitefish, halibut is really great, one of my favorites.
ooh, yeah.
I mean, you could even do something similar with crab or lobsters, if you wanted to get really fancy with it.
Would you do shell on or?
Well,
you
you know
kinda
what I
have
would do is I
to.
would go back to that stock process, right?
Ah,
And then you're
yeah.
going to make a lobster stock or a crab broth, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll use that, so you're kind of getting the flavor from both parts, right?
Nice.
Just going to do a little bit of our butter here, because, you know, why not?
My mother-in-law would often get lobster for special occasions like anniversaries and things, and then they'd only run into trouble if the kids would name them when they were still alive. Sammy and Whammy one year. They're like, don't kill Sammy and Whammy. All right.
Oh, I'm looking for the person who taught me how to open the oven door. I wanted her to be as proud of myself as I was.
Oh.
See?
Oh, and you closed it too? Okay. I will not turn it off this time. I've done that by accident.
All right, so now we're gonna do our shrimp. We can use the same pan. Actually, I think I am gonna use the same pan for our shrimp because we already have that yummy garlic thyme butter in there ready
Nice.
to go. So I have our shrimp in the fridge. Let me go grab those real quick.
All right. I just heard that we changed zones, Madison changed zones from like 5A to 5B for gardening. I'm like looking at the thyme and thinking about how my thyme does survive, but my rosemary doesn't. And I'm just sort of like, well, maybe, I mean, the world's on fire, but maybe my rosemary will survive the winter. It's just, you know.
I like to use Gulf shrimp. Sometimes you'll see them sold either white or brown. Usually it's just depending on what they're eating at the time that they're harvested. White shrimp will be sweeter, more mild in tasting. Brown shrimp will have a little more of that kind of briny, in a good way, right? Kind of that briny flavor. So I'm just gonna saute these shrimp real quick.
When you got these, did they have shells on?
Yes, these were
And tails?
shell and tail on. So
Okay.
I peeled those, used the shells for the broth.
Did you devein them?
I did, yes.
Okay. It's
Always
a
important.
laborious
It's
process.
very laborious.
Annoying. I make my husband do that part. I don't like deveining shrimp, but it's, you know, you just get the little black line out. You can get them deveined, but they're not always perfectly deveined. It'll say on
They're
the
not
package
always
deveined,
perfect,
and
and
it's
sometimes,
live.
usually, you know, especially with, and you know, there is a conception, oh, seafood can't be frozen. That's, you know, obviously not the case. But the more it's processed, if it's peeled, if it's deveined, usually then it's frozen when it's caught, and then thawed, and then frozen again, and then processed, right, and then frozen again. So almost more, you know, when it comes to things like shrimp, which actually freeze very well, I look for anything that's going to be less processed in that way, right?
So then you're doing the processing.
Right. Yes.
You're just giving yourself more work, but it's going to taste better, less mealy.
Yeah, absolutely. Way juicier.
Texturally, yeah.
Definitely sweeter. I'm going to season these with salt, pepper, and I think I'll use a little bit of this smoked paprika on those as well.
Nice.
We have a question from Carol. She wants to know, do you ever use monkfish for stock? She says she went to a cooking school in Barcelona and they usually used a fresh monkfish head for the broth.
Oh, the question was, can you use monkfish, specifically a monkfish head, when making broth? If anyone has seen a monkfish head, it looks like a monster. So it's like a big dinosaur thing. Monkfish works great for making stocks. Any, again, non-oily, non-fatty fish, so salmon you'd want to stay away from. But monkfish has a really thick spine that goes down the body that works really good for making broth. What an amazing experience to go to cooking school in Barcelona.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you for the question. Oh, I was coming to grab our pimenton.
Little lemon cheeks.
And while these are cooking, we're gonna start our mussels, which is the last component of this dish.
The shrimp are curling up and they're changing color. You can kind of see, but it's not, the pan is not as high as it was when you, is it a little bit less high?
It's a little bit less high, yeah. I kind of want these, especially since they're gonna go in a broth, I won't want them to be, I don't want them to be too rubbery, right? So I'd rather, whereas with the fish, we're looking for that nice brown caramelization. With our shrimp, we're really gonna look for that just cooked, where they're still.
Just barely, yes.
Yep.
Nice.
I am gonna check our fish, just so we don't overcook it.
No beards.
All right, so I'm gonna get this pan nice and hot. Anytime I cook mussels, it's basically, I like to start them in the pan, usually butter, garlic, white wine. We're gonna use some of our crop circle wheat here that we used before. And then I like to, about halfway through, once that liquid comes up to a boil, put a cover on the pan so they just kind of steam through.
Like a big cover, just a.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
I got nervous the first time I was making mussels, and as soon as they started to open a little bit, I was like, okay, done, they're open. They were not done. They needed a couple more minutes. So we started eating them, and I was like, well, these are really gross, and I've done a bad job. So now I do let them like open.
Yeah, they go pretty quick, but
they
you
go,
still
like, a
will
little bit.
notice. Yep.
And then they go big. And you're like, okay, that's what we're looking for. Because the recipe will just say when they open.
Right.
Not enough
So
information.
usually with mussels at the store, you'll find two different kinds, either a Prince Edward Island or a blue mussel. These are blue mussels.
blue, yeah.
You definitely want to make sure any ones that have already opened, we're not going to use. I'm going to start these in a little butter.
Do you want me to start picking them out? Or?
No, I got them.
You
I'll
got
bring them over here so we're not
Okay.
grabbing them. We're going to do about 5 or so per person today. 5 or 7. Ooh, that's very hot.
It's the splatter when the water hits the butter. But I'm always like, whoop, back up. Yes, question.
When I go to Costco, I see that they have mussels that are totally enclosed in plastic.
Like a vacuum packed?
I have no idea, but what I understood is that the mussels are still alive and that you shouldn't buy them
Oh.
enclosed in plastic.
That's a good question. So the mussels at Costco that are like essentially vacuum packed are in plastic?
Yeah, so those will be like a pre-cooked mussel. They work pretty good, great in stir fries. What you'll miss is you won't get that same, the broth or the cooking liquid won't be quite as flavorful. Pardon
They're
me.
partially cooked. So they work if you're gonna in certain preps, but they wouldn't work.
Right, those are going to be steamed ahead of time.
They don't look like they are. They look like they're just supposedly fresh mussels.
Oh,
You know, they're in the nets,
right.
and then they cover them with plastic.
Can they breathe?
Oh, yeah, that's,
What I've always been told is don't buy those because they're still alive and they can't breathe when they're still in plastic. But I didn't.
yeah. The thing
other
with
words, like,
mussels is they're alive. I mean, if,
Would the plastic kill them?
yeah, if
basically?
somebody
Like, 'cause
put
they
me in
couldn't
a
breathe.
container with plastic, I wouldn't last too long either.
Have you bought something at Costco?
Oh.
I bought Costco mussels. They were
I actually really like the seafood at Costco. I live right by one, and depending on what they have in that day, sometimes you can find some pretty good stuff.
We had an editor who was obsessed with the Costco salmon. Like was just in love with it.
So I'm gonna finish these with a little bit of our beer, and I had some wine, but I lost it, so it's fine. No, we'll just stick with beer, I think. because the flexible.
It was just here. I don't know where it went.
Who drank the wine? No.
Oh God!
This.
It was me. No.
All we're doing here is just giving it enough liquid where we can put the cover on. I might have used it all is probably what happened, and I just blame someone else.
Like the missing people.
Again, layering flavors. We're gonna season this as we go, and put a cover on and give those about
What's the temp
just
at the
2 or
heat
3
right now?
minutes. You know, I've got it pretty hot right now. I'm gonna just make sure it comes up to a rolling boil with the cover on, 20, 30 seconds, and then I'll drop the heat down just so it
Nice.
doesn't get too overcooked.
It seems to be one of the challenges with this dish might be just making sure that everything is warm at the same time, because like you've made this, you've got sort of the fish components.
Yeah.
Of it, like, but the fish is going to warm up when you put it with the broth, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You know, if you're making this for a larger group, there's definitely ways, you know, where you could, you know, really streamline that process. Fish could be baked in the oven, so
I love
just on
that.
a sheet tray,
Yes.
right? You know, same thing, shrimp baked in the oven. You could even just throw them right in here and they would poach really, really nice.
I would
Yeah.
do that. Yeah.
I'm trying to make our plates look a little nice, so
Yes.
you know,
I am just
my wife would
essentially
say
lazy.
I chef eat it
Like,
up.
I'm a very lazy person, and so I'm like, what corners can I cut here? Which is why I'm always
Right.
asking, like, can you put it in the food processor? Can you just like, can you not peel it?
So we've got our, oh yeah.
Sorry, we have a question from Bruce. He wants to know how he could use sablefish.
Sablefish is a really yummy fish. The question from Bruce was, how can we use sablefish? I've also seen it known called black cod. Really yummy fish, really fatty.
love black
Great on the grill. It takes really good to a marinade as well. You'll see it a lot in Japanese cuisine, so any type of soy sauce or white miso marinade works really good on sablefish. Otherwise, it's pretty mild tasting, so I would think you could use it where you would use any, you know, if a recipe called for cod, haddock, any of the, you know, kind of flaky white fishes, it would work well for that. But it's super yummy fish. Good question. While this is almost done, I'm just gonna throw in some fresh herbs at the end. I've got some parsley and little tiny chives.
Like, I've never chopped a chive that looks like this. That just, it's so little.
You know, again, thinking about everything deserves equal thought, right? Chives are, you know, kind of oniony, right? You have a larger piece,
Yeah.
you're gonna get a strong onion flavor. Plus, if you cut them really fine like that, they'll stay greener longer, so
Yeah.
because they're not as bruised, right? So we're just gonna do a little fresh parsley and
Your knife has
chives
to
in
be
here
sharp.
at the end.
For a chop like that. My knife was never that sharp. They remind me of the little rubber bands you put around your bracelet.
Yeah, funny.
Like, well,
All right, so that smells really good. Our mussels are doing good. I'm gonna give them about 1 more minute or so, but you can see they're starting to turn kind of that orangey, opaque color, opening up. Give them 1 more minute.
would your kids eat this?
My middle son, Britt, loves mussels, and he
Okay.
would eat all of them. The other 2, it would depend.
It just, sometimes kiddos and fish.
I know it. Yeah, so we're getting close, ready to serve here. I always like to do this with some good crusty bread. I've got some ciabatta bread today.
Do you guys make it? Did you buy this? Like, where's your
This
ciabatta?
bread I got from a bakery
Nice,
in
which one?
town. This was from, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a brain fart. On Atwood, Batch.
Batch.
Yes.
I mean, it looks batchy.
Yes. And I'm just gonna cut this into pieces. Maybe I'll warm this in the oven real quick.
They make a bread called scalli that
Ooh,
is
I've never
very,
had that there.
It's very similar to the Vienna bread that my grandma would get when growing up. Vienna bread, we called it. But it's just very, very open crumb and like white sesame seeds on top. Delicious. But yeah,
Yum.
I'm obsessed with their scalli. Focaccia's really pretty.
Yeah, it's a good.
They make a baguette too. It's called épis de blé or pain épi, where it looks like a branch.
Oh, excellent.
Cool.
We, at the Great Dane, we serve a whole bunch of pretzels
Yes.
that we make ourselves, and we do it in the Epi style, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we wanted to do, something not so traditional. Also, that shape is to represent a stalk of
Yes, a stalk of-
wheat,
yeah.
right? Which is what all the beer we make comes from. So we thought there was kind of a cool synergy there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I talked to somebody at the Great Dane about that. There's a new bill that just passed the Senate, I think, that's going to allow, ideally, the Great Dane to have other people make Great Dane beer, so you
Yeah.
can have more, and it might be back at the Mallards next summer.
All right, so we're getting kind of ready. I can make a plate here, yeah?
Let's do it.
All right, so I'm gonna start. I'll bring our stuff over here. I'll make some room.
Make room for you here.
Yeah.
We have lemons already prepped, little lemon cheeks.
Yeah, we do that. That's kind of a restaurant thing. We'll use these for during service, so you can get a squeeze of a lemon real quickly, no seeds, and then we save the insides, right? I didn't even bring a lemon, but you're basically cutting 4 little planks off of it, save the insides. We make a strawberry lemonade. Right now we're doing a dark cherry lemonade. We serve with cocktails, so.
That sounds really
Yeah.
good. These shrimp are gorgeous. Beautiful. Like,
Yeah, shrimp
shiny,
look
buttery
good. I
garlic,
like
yummy.
the smoked paprika flavor on there. Our mussels, I like to kind of do a little parsley on these. So for service, I would start with our broth. I like to use a rim, obviously, a plate with a rim, right? So we have enough space for our broth that we work so hard to make. Thank
yeah,
you.
this is not
And then, I would probably think maybe 5 or 6 shrimp per person. You can arrange these kind of around the outside in a circle. Some mussels. And then we're gonna finish yeah. And finish with a nice piece of our seared mahi to kind of go in the center. And then we can do some more chives for garnish.
That's so pretty.
Yeah. And then some fresh lemon is always good with seafood at the end. And then anytime I always like to just a little more seasoning, especially on seared protein, right on the top. And of course, some warm, crusty bread to go with it is always
That's gorgeous.
good.
Yeah, let's show them here. Oh my goodness. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Wow, gorgeous. Thank you so much, Chef Matt, for making this beautiful dish and teaching us how and answering our questions and putting on a lovely show for us.
Yeah, fantastic.
We're very excited
Hope
to eat
everyone's
it.
hungry.
Yes. Again, the people who are about to enjoy this are people who are here in person, who are Cap Times members. So if you'd like to be one of the lucky few, you can become a member at membership.captimes.com. We appreciate your support. I also would like to thank one more time Kesnick's, our official kitchen sponsor, for hosting us, and Leopold's, our wine pairing sponsor. I think we'll pick the bay leaf question from Margaret.
I like the bay leaf
Solid
question.
You're our
choice.
winner. Yeah. So if you want to stop by Leopold's within the next week and pick up your bottle of wine, you could enjoy it. Maybe make this dish for yourself and try the pairing for yourself. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll join us next month. And that's it.
Yay.
Thank you. Cheers.
This is beautiful. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Anything in winter that involves